Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Quinn, and I am very excited to be here as the newest member of the Cuomo administration. Thank you. And before I talk about the important issue we're working on here today, let me just make a few acknowledgments. We are so happy to have our public advocate, Tish James, with us, who's done so much work on this issue of rape and sexual assault, so thank you. We expect to be joined by Gail Brewer, the Manhattan Borough President. I also want to recognize Andrea Miller of NARAL, who's with us, and thank her for all her work on the Women's Equality Act. We also have Tracy Brooks, our terrific statewide head of Planned Parenthood, who's been working arm in arm with NARAL, so thank you. Mary Havlin, New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault, is with us. Mary, no one has fought harder for survivors of sexual assault and rape than Mary. And Mary, I know this is a hard time for you personally, so on behalf of the governor, thank you so much for being here with us. We have Connie Neal of the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We want to thank NYU for their leadership and for hosting us, and recognize Dr. Zoe Ragozio, the Associate Vice President for NYU Student Services on Sexual Misconduct and Support Services. Thank you. We have Helen Kim, the ED of the YMCA of Queens. I want to thank you, Helen, for being here. Let's give a round of applause for everyone who's with us today. And we're here today to talk about a very important and unfortunate issue in New York and across the country, the issue of sexual assault and rape on college campuses. And we're here to make sure we are comprehensively on every campus addressing this problem. As you all know, Governor Cuomo has championed the Women's Equality Act, which started as a 10-point act. But true to Governor Cuomo, it is this summer became an 11-point act. I think by the time we're done, it'll probably be a 44-point act. The 11th point being responding to the issue of rape and sexual assault on college campuses. I just want to take a moment, though, point of personal privilege if I can, to thank you, Governor Cuomo, because you have made the issue of women's equality and the issue of women deserving full equality, not 8 out of 10, not 9 out of 11, but everything a priority. You made it one of your highest priorities in your campaign. I want to thank Neil Cole, who's with us today, who worked with me and you on the Women's Equality Party. I don't think we have a governor who's ever done as much on the issue of bringing equality to women and girls in our state as you are, and that's why we are here today, so thank you. And part of the governor's work is in response to what we have all seen and heard in the news. Story after story, at one college or another, of people who have been victims of crime and abuse. And then after that, they are in fact re-victimized by the very institutions that they are a part of and the very institutions that should be there to support, help them, bring them justice, and help them transition from victim to survivor. The simple fact is, tragically, that sexual assault and rape have become an epidemic across the landscape of higher education in our country. And we're here today to build on our work in New York State, ensuring that all campuses and colleges and universities are being proactive and aggressive in protecting the rights of students. And that means taking bold and sweeping action that may make some people uncomfortable. We saw an example of exactly that kind of bold leadership last year when Governor Cuomo and our great SUNY Chancellor Nancy Zimpher and other leaders at the State University of New York stood up and passed a strong sexual assault policy to protect our students. This policy, make no mistake, it's tough, it's comprehensive, and it covers all 64 SUNY colleges in the state of New York. But this problem is not about public colleges. I don't want people to think that. It's not unique to one type of college or another. It impacts private institutions with consequences that are just as dire. And that's why we're here today at NYU, because we need to make sure that those private colleges and universities are providing their students the same protections and rights as we now provide the students at SUNY. So today, I'm incredibly proud to announce that a major piece of Governor Cuomo's 2015 agenda, the agenda that he'll be announcing this week as part of the State of the State, will include mandating that all private colleges and universities in the state of New York abide by the very same rules and requirements that all 64 SUNY campuses now do. That is a major step forward in our state. This means that every college student at every school in our state, from Brooklyn to Buffalo, will be afforded the same protections against rape and sexual assault. That includes having a uniform and affirmative definition of consent, so yes means yes, and amnesty policies, which are very important to encourage students to report abuse, and clear and strong confidentiality protocols and trainings to better protect students. It also involves creating a sexual violence victim and survivor Bill of Rights in order to specifically inform students of their legal rights and how they can report instances of abuse to outside law enforcement, including state police, if they choose to and want to. As we prepare for the next step in this fight, I want to take a moment and really thank all of the students, one of whom we're going to hear from today, but the students at private and public colleges across the state of New York who have done so much work to draw attention to what's gone on at their campuses, many of them talking bravely about what happened to them or their close friends personally, which is so very hard. If we could give them a round of applause, because we wouldn't be here without them. And we're so very proud of all of you to be doing that. It's very, very hard. I'm excited to join the governor's team, particularly at this moment, as we make sure this happens right now for every college student. As we all stand up and say colleges in New York State will be safe places for every student. It's the right thing to do. We'll continue to work on this issue and the entirety of the Women's Equality Act until we get it done, and we won't stop fighting until we get it done. And towards that end, I am just very proud and excited to get to call up our next speaker, a woman who has been leading our great State University of New York in incredibly visionary ways, particularly including students who aren't even in SUNY yet, some of our younger students, to make sure they can be in SUNY, and who this past fall really set the stage for how we can end this epidemic in New York and across the country, our great Chancellor of SUNY, Nancy Zimpher.
Well, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I just want to begin by congratulating Christine, and thank you, Governor, for appointing someone with the kind of passion and expertise that Christine will bring to this job. It is the leadership of the governor to set policy, but then to find the right people to execute and enact policy. So we are in terrific hands, and I want to thank you both and congratulate you. So, motivated by the very comment that you made, Christine, that sexual assault is epidemic in proportion and impacting all of society, not just colleges and universities, but we're in a position where we can do something about it. So we have embraced the governor's call to action on this issue at the State University of New York, and we have undertaken, as Christine said, a comprehensive approach that includes a wide variety of policies and regulations to address the problem of sexual assault from a number of angles. So it is our hope that SUNY can be a model as other campuses adopt these policies. And I have to say, of the governor's presence at the State University of New York Board of Trustees meeting, where you invoked us to align the policies campus to campus so that it is a system-wide approach. The way we do policy at SUNY is that our board adopts policy and then it becomes actionable at each and every one of our 64 campuses, our 465,000 students, our 90,000 faculty and staff, and our 3 million alumni. We are affecting all of the SUNY family with this policy. We've adopted a clear and uniform definition of consent. We've created strong amnesty and confidentiality policies to encourage students to report instances of assault as soon as they occur. We're also partnering, Christine, with other state agencies. The other day, we were training police from all of our campuses with the help of our state agencies. So relative to those agencies and our police practices, security to the victims, sensitivities, so that we employ the best practices in every way when we handle these issues. So those are just a few of the measures that are being undertaken across the SUNY system, safer environments for all of our students, and Christine is my witness. This is our primary goal, to create the safety in a living and learning environment. And I have to say, and the governor is my witness here, there was some skepticism that we were going to over-regulate or that this would be onerous, that we were telling our campuses what to do. On the contrary, our campuses were already employing practices unique to their context, but now we have aligned those policies across the entire system. And I have to tell you, SUNY is a proud partner with Governor Cuomo on this issue, and we will be proud to assist other campuses as they embrace this higher goal for each of our campuses in the state of New York. So as we continue to write this story today, it's my privilege to introduce Dorchen Leithold, Director of the Sanctuary for Families and its Center for Battered Women's Legal Services. Dorchen?
Thank you so much, Chancellor, and congratulations, Christine. My name is Dorchen Leithold, and I direct the Center for Battered Women's Legal Services at Sanctuary for Families. Sanctuary is the largest provider of dedicated legal, clinical, residential, and economic empowerment services to victims of intimate partner and related forms of gender-based violence in New York State. We serve more than 10,000 women, men, and children every single year. Sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and stalking should not be part of the college experience for young women, but they are for far too many. Experts estimate that approximately 1 out of 4 American college women will experience a completed or attempted rape. I am one of those women. And this is the first time I've ever spoken publicly about it. I'm used to being an advocate for other survivors of violence. And while I was one of the fortunate ones, I succeeded in fighting off my assailant and emerged relatively unscathed. I know and work with so many women and girls whose lives and whose dreams have been upended by campus sexual assault, campus intimate partner dating violence, campus stalking. I want to stress that campus gender violence devastates victims, and it also devastates their families. One of my clients escaped brutal domestic violence as a young mother, only to be re-traumatized a decade later when her 18-year-old daughter was drugged and raped on a college campus. Her daughter was living out the American dream that her mother was unable to, only to experience a brutal rape. A law student intern working at Sanctuary's Legal Center confided in me that she had been brutally raped on the campus of her very prestigious private college, brutally raped to the point that she had suffered internal hemorrhaging, only to encounter indifference from the administration, more intent on protecting its reputation than on protecting her safety. So Sanctuary for Families applauds you, Governor, for your leadership in the movement, and we're talking about a movement here today to equip all colleges and universities with the tools that they need to protect and empower victims of campus assault and to hold their perpetrators accountable. Thank you so much. And I am, forgive me, and I am so delighted to introduce Christine Public.
Thank you, Dorchen. Good morning. My name is Christine Public. I'm a junior at SUNY Stony Brook, and I'm an advocate for victims of sexual assault. I first became involved with this cause when my best friend at school was assaulted just over a year ago. Oh, now you can see me better. I guess I'll start again. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Public. I'm a junior at SUNY Stony Brook, and I'm an advocate for victims of sexual assault. I first became involved with this cause when my best friend at school was assaulted just over a year ago. She was a senior at the time, and after her attack, she found the strength to come forward with her story, and she's now working to move on and begin a career as a social worker. With that being said, I was a witness to her difficult recovery process, and that process is still ongoing. Her story made it clear to me that we need to do more as a society to improve the way we handle sexual assault in higher education. For example, I'm active in my school's Violence Intervention and Prevention Committee, and we raise awareness about sexual assault and the important role that bystanders can play in preventing it. But we also need to have a clear set of rules and guidelines for all colleges to use. I was excited last fall to hear that Governor Cuomo and Chancellor Zimpher were working to make all SUNY schools adopt a uniform sexual assault policy that can better protect students. SUNY is now implementing that kind of comprehensive policy, and I'm very excited to see change in action thanks to the governor's leadership. This is all great news, and I have no doubt that our campus is becoming safer because of it. I still worry about my friends, however, and other schools outside of SUNY. If private colleges aren't held to that same standard, what guarantees do their students have that their rights will be protected and instances of abuse will be handled properly? That is why we need the law that Governor Cuomo and his team are proposing. No one should have to go through the same experience that my best friend did. And bringing SUNY's sexual assault policy to all schools in our state is the first step to making sure all students in New York are protected. Thank you very much, and I would now like to introduce Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Good morning. And let's give Christine another round of applause for a job really well done. It's not easy to get up here. It's not easy to get up here and then they come out and pull the drawer out in front of you. Thank you very much, and thank you for that sharing that story. To Chris Quinn, who is the newest member of the Cuomo administration. She just started. Today is her first day. Give her a round of applause. Chris said to me backstage, glad to be here, first day. She said, but let me ask you, do we always work on Saturdays? I said, no, just once a week, really. To Chancellor Nancy Zimpher, who runs a great, great SUNY system. But not only does she run a great academic university, she's used the academic university to really make progressive statements across the board, and this is one of them. She has led by example. The law that we're proposing today has a precedent. SUNY did it. When SUNY does it on a large scale. And if you can do it at SUNY, any school can do it. So, Chancellor Zimpher, thank you very much. for being with us. Dorch and Leibold, thank you for your leadership, and thank you also for sharing your story with us. We know how hard it is. To NYU, not just for hosting us today, but we're here for a particular reason. We're here because NYU has also led the way, and they've led the way voluntarily. NYU has a history and a tradition of progressive leadership, and they've done it once again, so let's give them a round of applause. We have some great advocates with us. Tish James is with us. She's been recognized. Gail Brewer has just joined us. Let's thank her. And we have Neil Cole with us, who helped birth, on the male side, the Women's Equality Party. Let's give him a round of applause. You know, one thing that has always surprised me and continues to surprise me is how many basic issues we have as a society and how long they go on, how long we tolerate injustice. Even in a place like New York, even New York City, where we have so much attention and such a progressive history and such activism, problems can persist for a long period of time. And the problems that women have faced and are facing, these are not new problems. They have continued for a very long time. And that is actually part of the problem. Issue of domestic violence, we've been talking about for decades. And the failure of society to recognize domestic violence. Glass ceiling and income inequality for women. We have talked about for decades. The differential in promotion of women in the private employment scale, we've talked about for decades, with little change. And the issue we're talking about today, we have talked about for decades. Sexual abuse of women. That's what today is about. And the imbalance in power that women face across the board, which is one of the reasons why these problems have not been solved, because women are not as powerful in the political process as men. It's not easy to say, but I believe that. Fewer elected officials are women proportionately, and they have less power in the system. And I think that's one of the reasons why the problems against women have gone on for so long. Now, there are two facts. You heard a lot of facts today, but there are two facts that actually compound each other. 1 out of 4 women will be a victim of a sexual attack during their academic years. 1 out of 4 women. That is breathtaking. Second fact, less than 5% of the attacks are reported. Less than 5%. The experts believe that it's actually a relatively small number of people who are recidivists. Well, how is that happening? Because we're not reporting the assault. So the recidivists do it again and again and again. 1 out of 4, less than 5% reported. They are connected. Why do we have less than 5% reporting? Because somehow, societally, we have suggested to the woman, to the victim, well, maybe you're to blame in this situation. Maybe you have a culpability. Maybe you have a liability. Maybe it's taboo for women to talk about this type of thing. I believe there are institutions, as Dorchin alluded to, that want to protect their relationship, and they don't want the publicity of the attacks happening on their campus. So they do what they can to tamp it down. Well, this is a private matter. This is a private matter. No, it's not a private matter. It is a crime. And the woman is not complicit. The woman is a victim. And that attitude has to change. Well, the woman agreed to be with the man in a private setting. Yes. And if the man murdered a woman, would you say, well, that was a private setting? It was a private affair? If the man robbed the woman, would you say, well, that was a private setting? That was a private affair? This is a crime committed in a private setting, but it is a crime. And the woman did nothing wrong. And this culture and this attitude that we have allowed to go on for too long, that a private institution has the right to, well, just sweep this under the rug, and play to the woman's weakness and fears in this situation, and exploit the woman further by suggesting if she actually seeks recourse and seeks justice, it will be difficult for her. Right? That's how we discriminate and discourage women from doing this. A woman just goes through a horrendous, possibly life-changing act. She goes to report it to seek help. And the authorities say, well, this is going to be difficult. This may be embarrassing. This gets out. It's going to be hard for you to deal with. Maybe it's better we just leave it alone. It shouldn't be left alone. It's a crime. When you leave alone a crime, you allow the criminal to do it again. And that's what we're doing now. And trying to silence it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for the individual. Because you can't go home and say, well, I'll just forget about it. Because it's here. And you live with it every day, and you think about it every night. And I believe part of the best resolution is to actually resolve it and have no shame in the situation and no liability because the woman doesn't. Now, we rolled out the policy at SUNY. As I said, I thank Chancellor Zimfer for implementing the policy. As you heard, SUNY is a very large system, and they've rolled it out, and it's worked very, very well. We now want to codify it as a law and have it binding on all schools in the state of New York. And the law basically has 4 points. First, that the consent must be affirmative. It's not a burden on the woman to say no and then have to defend whether or not she said no. It has to be an affirmative consent by the woman. That's what they mean by yes means yes. The female has to affirmatively consent to any sexual acts. Second, the victim will be given a Bill of Rights that informs the victim of their rights, which says you have options. You can either speak to the local campus authorities, or you can speak to the local police department, or you can go to the state police of the state of New York. This is important because sometimes the attitude locally is, let's make believe this didn't happen, and let's do what we can to make the problem go away. So we want the victim to have options, local campus options, or local police, or the New York State Police, who you have my word will handle this professionally and understands who the victim really is and who the perpetrator is, and will do everything they can to investigate the case properly. Third, we have amnesty for the victim or for bystanders for related offenses. In other words, one thing that often happens is alcohol may have been involved or drugs may have been involved. And then the victim is in a situation where she may be subject to other charges for alcohol or drugs. And one of the things that I believe is actually used against the woman is, well, you know, they were serving alcohol and they weren't supposed to be serving alcohol. Well, we understand there were drugs at the party and you may have done drugs and therefore you may have liability in this issue. To compare those two things is night and day. So this law will provide amnesty to the victim or the bystander from any related offenses, which I believe are really just tactics to stop the victim from coming forward and pursuing her rights. So amnesty will be part of this bill. And the fourth point is going to be training all across the board so the campus administrators know about this new law and know about the rights of victims and are informing the victims of their rights and certainly not doing anything that would discourage the victim from enforcing and pursuing her rights. My last point is we now have to get this done. We have to get it passed. Little detail. We got it done at SUNY because Chancellor Zimpfer saw the righteousness of the effort and brought it to the Board of Trustees, and they passed it. To get a law done statewide, it's a little more complicated. Something called the New York State Legislature, Senate and Assembly, which is always a pleasure to deal with, a very nice, expeditious body that they are. But we have to get the law passed. And that's where you come in. We started something called the Women's Equality Party this past election season for a very simple purpose. My father, God rest his soul, used to say, in politics, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. What does that mean? The system responds to the people who make noise. And the system responds to the people who make their voices heard. And it's sort of the path of least resistance. If the legislature doesn't have to act, they don't act. When do they act? They act when there's a lot of pressure on them to act. And what the Women's Equality Party was saying is women have to be better organized in making their voice heard. Because I do believe this is all related. 1 out of 4 women, a victim, only 5% being reported. And we've allowed this to go on for a long, long time. It's all about the imbalance of power against women. That is the systemic problem. And that's what has to be resolved. And the way we resolve that is you take an issue like this, which is of particular importance to women, and we make our voice heard. We make our voice heard. If women make their voice heard on this issue, I guarantee you it will pass. It is that simple. It is right. It is righteous. It is inarguable. The legislature should, if this was a different system, just look at the merits and say, well, we're going to do it because it's the right thing. But if women make their voice heard, this will pass. If this passes, it will make a difference in people's lives. It will mean fewer women have to go through this pain. It means the crimes will be reported, we will catch the perpetrator, and the recidivism will stop. That's what this means. I also would venture to say this. We pass this law in the state of New York, you will see this law go nationwide. Because one of the things the state of New York does is, first of all, it's the state of New York. And when you do something in the state of New York, people notice. Why? Because there are a lot of states, but then there's New York. And when you do it in New York, he says with his New York arrogance. When you do it in New York, people notice. And sometimes the question is the answer. We passed marriage equality in the state of New York, and that allowed every reporter and every citizen to say to every politician in this country, do you support marriage equality? Do you believe gays have the right to marry? The question was the answer. Of course. Otherwise, we're discriminating against gays. We passed sensible gun control, which allowed everyone to ask the question, don't you think there should be sensible gun control? We passed this law. It will allow and start a dialogue across this nation. Don't you think we should stop the sexual abuse against women, especially young women on college campuses? And the answer is going to be, of course we should and we can. Pass the law and let's make a difference in New York and the nation. Thank you and God bless you.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out on this cold morning to move us forward on this other important step. But most importantly, I just want to say, Governor, I don't know that there are very few examples, if we went back in history or looked at the other governors in this country right now, where you could find anyone who has ever made the kind of statement you just made, not just about people who have been victims of rape and sexual assault, but about the challenge and the injustice towards women in this country. So I just want to salute you for getting it right and seeing it in a way most people don't. And thank you all for coming this morning. Thank you.